Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 3, text 40. Translation. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Purport. The enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul. Therefore, Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. Mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, and thus when we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification, and as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Intelligence is the immediate next-door neighbor of the soul. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter, and thus with the mind and the senses. The spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes this as true happiness. This false identification of the spirit soul is very nicely explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridatuke sudik kalatradishu bhome jidi yatirtha buddhi salilena kahichij janesha vigeshu saiva gokara. A human being who identifies this body made of three elements with his self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to the place of pilgrimage simply to take a bath rather than meet the men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow. Injyani mano buddhir asyadishtanam uchate etayar vimohayachesha jnanam avrichadehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So tonight, we are hearing about the specific activities of lust. The specific places in which lust develops and what it does. The specific places are the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. And these places become bewildered by the activities of lust. The senses, because they are the immediate repository of their objects. In other words, the senses are viewing their objects, and immediately there is bewilderment because of the attachment of the sense and its object. The senses, like the sight, immediately grab upon form. Hearing, the sense of hearing immediately grabs upon sound. The sense of taste immediately grabs upon some taste. The sense of smell immediately grabs upon aroma. And the skin immediately grabs upon some touch. And this kind of attraction and attachment is immediate. It cannot be stopped by mechanical means. It is just like iron and magnet. It rather has to be controlled by not putting the senses in such a circumstance to begin with. If one does not put the senses in such a position that they will come in contact with their mundane sense objects, that is the safest path. Because as soon as the senses come in contact with their objects, then immediately there is some kind of bewilderment there, because the senses are attracted, and immediately Lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Just as Krishna says in the second part of this verse. Itaya vimohayachesha jnanam avrichadenam. The lust that immediately develops when a sense comes in contact with its object covers the living entity and bewilders him. Beyond the senses is the mind. Indriyani pranyahu indriyebhyak parakmanaha manasustu manobudhir yobude paratastu saha. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains about the hierarchical existence of the senses, etc. Indriyani pranyahu, above the senses is the mind. First you have the sense objects. But the senses are superior to the sense objects because they are utilizing them for sense gratification. Above the senses is the mind, because the mind is the repository for all sense desire. Whenever one has this desire for the sense enjoyment, that desire will rest in the mind, and it will cover the mind with lust, and it will cause the mind to become fixed and meditate on a particular thing. Thus, lust comes in contact with the mind and becomes attached there. The senses are by nature lusty for their objects, but the mind can be lusty for anything that brings about enjoyment, either subtle or gross. The mind is very eager that the senses shall enjoy, but as well the mind is eager that it shall get properly glorified. Everybody's mind is very eager to hear about himself. How wonderful we are. What nice qualities we have. Therefore, it is very easy to bewilder somebody by just praising him all the time. You tell him how wonderful he is. Then even if he's a very envious rascal or whatever, then he will like you very much. Even if you actually don't like them. But if you just say how wonderful they are. Because people want to hear how wonderful they are. They will even put aside the fact that you are cheating them. And they may even know it, but not care. Because everybody likes to hear about how nice they are. Oh, how beautiful you are. You could be completely terrible looking. But, oh, how beautiful you are. Oh, really? This is the nature of the mind. It likes to glorify the self. What is the self that the mind likes to glorify? Well, it's not the spirit soul. It's the body. The mind loves to hear about the glories of the body. And it really doesn't like to hear about insults to the body. No. Somebody says, you stink. Blasphemy. Offense. Aparad. How can you say that to me? But if somebody comes up and says, you're very wonderful, even though the person's a complete nonsense, just by saying that, oh, you're so learned, immediately everybody is very enlivened. The mind, very lusty. It wants to enjoy directly sense gratification of the senses, and it likes to be glorified. Fame, profit, and distinction. This platform is on the platform of the mind. That's how the mind displays its lust, actually. By fame, profit, and distinction. It wants to be very famous. Everybody likes to be famous, that the people will scream from the rooftops, your name. You! Everybody's cheering. You! And the mind is very happy. Fame and profit, to act and get something from it. Some money, some position, some something which we enjoy. And distinction. I am distinct amongst all others. Although everybody's the same, more or less. 2 arms, 2 legs, head, eyes. But one wants to be very distinct amongst all the others. My 2 arms are bigger than everybody else. My head has more brain than anyone else. My eyes are very expert at seeing. Distinction, somehow or another. If somebody has even the slightest distinction, he is immediately very pleased and very happy to exploit that distinction over others. If somebody has some ability, he loves to make others know that he has it best. In a subtle way. Subtly, this is going on all the time. In fact, that causes disturbances between devotees sometimes. When devotees see the other one is trying to show how wonderful he is, then one gets disturbed, because in the Krishna consciousness movement, we want to show how wonderful Krishna is. Now, sometimes it's asked, how can we overcome the illusion of being concerned with ourselves? Trying to get others to appreciate how nicely we do everything. How others will glorify us. Well, the answer is quite simple. We have to, instead of expecting glorification for ourselves, we have to offer glorification to Krishna, our spiritual master. In other words, instead of expecting glorification, one should give it to Krishna. Then one becomes glorified. Now, you should not do that to become glorified. That's also contaminated. But one should know, as Ramananda Roy was discussing with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most famous and glorious person is a devotee of the Lord who is simply doing things for the sake and satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Then, that person is actually glorified. Actually, it's a fact. The best servant of Krishna is the most glorified person. But that person is the one who gives the most glorification to Krishna. The more you give to Krishna, the more one will also get, but that is not why one is giving. One should not give to Krishna with the idea to get, but rather one should give to Krishna with the idea to please Krishna. And then, automatically, one will also become glorified. But at that point, one will no longer be caring about being glorified. That's the amazing thing about Krishna consciousness. Sometimes people say, what's the use of this? I mean, why should I give to Krishna, so that I can become glorified? But because when I become glorified, I won't care about it anymore. I mean, what's the use of that? I mean, after all, if I'm going to do some work to be glorified, I should like to enjoy the result. But no, that's a miser. He will do some activity in order to enjoy the result. That's fruitive. We do not serve Krishna or do anything for Krishna with the idea of enjoying the results of that in any way. No, that's cheating business. We don't do like that. We serve Krishna because we like to serve Krishna. And not only do we like to serve Krishna, but the result of that is very pleasing to us. We don't serve Krishna to become glorified. Although that may happen. You may be glorified somehow. You may be praised somehow. But when one is praised or glorified for serving Krishna, he's not attached to that. And he's not thinking of that as his enjoyment. He's thinking, sometimes a devotee thinks of that as his suffering. If others have to praise him, he becomes very disturbed. Because then he knows, if they go on praising me, then I'm going to start believing it. And then I'm going to be in trouble. Oh, you are the greatest collector. Oh, you are the greatest, most skillful carpenter. Or you're the greatest pujari. Or you're the greatest cook. Or you are the greatest... Yeah. After you please somebody's senses, he says like that. Yeah. It's like, if you cook something and it tastes nice, and everybody's pleased, then they say, oh, you're the greatest. You're the greatest what? You're the greatest Sudra. You've managed to please somebody's senses, therefore he's very much pleased to glorify you. Well, that's Sudra mentality. So if somebody starts to glorify us like that, oh, you are the greatest, and we start to believe it, then we're in trouble. We're not the greatest anything. Sometimes devotees say, well, I'm the smallest. Well, you're not the smallest either. There's no distinction for you. You're neither the greatest, you're neither the smallest. You're somewhere in the middle with everybody else. There's only one greatest and only one smallest, and that's Krishna. And that position's already taken up. There's no possibility of moving into that position. So therefore, actually, a devotee considers those who praise him to be almost like enemies. You think friend would praise, this is very nice, but actually, it's like an enemy. Because as soon as one praises you, immediately that's what one thinks. Me, the greatest. Big frog. Blowing up. This is very dangerous. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu states, Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarorapi Sahishnuna, Amanina Manandena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. That one should be very tolerant. More tolerant than a tree. It's like now all the trees are standing out in the rain. It's no fun in the rain. But they're tolerating. Of course, they have no choice. But we should be more tolerant even than a tree. And feeling ourselves lower than the straw in the street. This is very difficult. Straw in the street gets kicked around, doesn't complain. But the living entity who feels himself so never is disturbed in any circumstance. And the most important part, Amanina Manandena, should be ready to offer all respect to others, but never expecting respect in return. That is very hard. We are generally always expecting respect and never offering respect to others. Therefore, to always offer respect to others and never expect respect in return is very difficult. Practically, very rarely do we ever see such a thing. It's very rare that we find how one is ready to respect others and not expecting respect for himself. Because this is a very great quality. Now, to offer all respect to others means that one should think of himself as very lowly and want to help others. And one should never expect that he will be respected. Because after all, logically speaking, nobody respects anybody in the Kali Yuga. So therefore, just strictly from the point of view of logic, one should not be expected. One should not be thinking of himself that he's worthy of respect, because nobody's going to respect you anyway. Nowadays in the Kali Yuga, people are generally respecting only in so much as they are getting sense gratification from somebody. Just like the boss of a job may be respected because he gives you the money. Or whoever is in charge, he's respected only because we get something out of it. If there's nothing to be gotten out of it, then we make revolution and tear down that person, put somebody else up, and expect he's going to satisfy our senses too. But actual respect means to know that I am Krishna's servant. I get nothing out of it. I get nothing material out of being Krishna's servant. Of course you get necessities of life. No problem. Everybody gets something. And it is not bad. But the real point is that one is doing things simply for the sake of the Lord. And that not only applies materially, it applies, does not only apply gross materially, in other words, that we're not interested in getting bodily sense gratification, but that also means we're not interested in getting subtle sense gratification either from our activities. This is very hard to even be renounced on that platform. It's like to do something for Krishna and then nobody cares. It's very hard. But if somebody comes around and sees what we've done and says, very good, then that keeps us going. Just like if all day I just walked around and just looked, didn't say anything, went on. After a while you pull your hair out. So we have to come around and say, very good. Of course, sometimes we say, blah, terrible. That's another thing. But it is a fact. It is very good. What one is doing for Krishna is good. That is nice. And we like to say, very good. Yes, it is good. But one should actually get over that point. Of course, that means practically you have to stop being a person. It's theoretical to come to the point of not having to be dependent on anybody appreciating what we're doing. This is a completely theoretical platform. It simply doesn't exist. Now one may say, wait a minute, that sounds like a contradiction there. But no, it's not. Because the reason why it doesn't exist is because Krishna always appreciates. Krishna always appreciates what you do. And if you're doing something, spiritual master always appreciates that too. Therefore, how can you live without that appreciation? How can a devotee live without the appreciation of Krishna? If Krishna doesn't appreciate what we're doing, what is the use of doing it? If Krishna doesn't like what we're doing, or spiritual master doesn't like what is the use of doing it? It's just a waste of time. Rather, we should do something which is actually pleasing spiritual master and Krishna, and then it has great usage. Then our doing it is very nice. Otherwise, what's the use? So therefore, it's not possible to come to the platform wherein one doesn't care at all whether somebody appreciates or not. He's neutral. He just goes on serving purely out of duty without any concern. Because actually there is appreciation. And factually, that appreciation will also manifest through the devotees. Just like, for instance, if you cook something. This is, of course, the most obvious example because the appreciation manifests very quickly. So if you cook something and it is liked by all the devotees, generally that is so because Krishna liked it. Otherwise, it is not possible that everybody will be satisfied unless Krishna was satisfied. Something may taste good and you may eat it, but at the end, one doesn't feel like glorifying the cook or, something I ate, alright. But if Krishna was satisfied, then somehow it becomes so ecstatic, this eating, that one starts glorifying the cook. Actually, one is not really glorifying the cook simply. One is actually glorifying the fact that Krishna appreciated it. Actually, one is saying, how glorious you are that Krishna has accepted this offering and liked it. That is basically what one is saying. And that is the glory of that cook, for instance. The glory of a devotee is that Krishna appreciates what he does. If Krishna likes what you do, then you are a very glorious person. And everybody else will also like what you do. If Krishna doesn't like what you do, then it is not very glorious. Then it falls down to the material platform. And on the material platform, somebody may like, somebody may dislike. Everybody can have his little followers on the material platform. Rock and roll stars have. Politicians have. Rich men have. Beautiful persons have. Everybody has their own little group which likes or dislikes. It's called friends. Those who like you because you're so great, they're your friends. It's actually ridiculous. But that's what friends means. Everybody who's in the friends group, they think each other is great. And they glorify each other, although probably they mean very little of it. Or maybe they mean it to some extent. But the real idea is, so long as you glorify me, I'll glorify you. In English we say, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. In other words, I'll satisfy you with sense gratification so long as you're satisfying me with sense gratification. This is the basis upon which all marriages are going on in the material world. So long as you give me sense gratification, I'll give you sense gratification, and we are in love. This actually, we don't say in love, we say in lust. Oh, this brahmachari's in lust with that brahmacharini. Oh, this husband and wife, they are in lust. We never say in love. What does this mean, in love? It is a way of sentimentally trying to say in lust. But that's all it is, basically. Because this attraction and appreciation of each other is a lusty thing. Lust not only in the body, but in the mind and the intelligence as well. Because lust is situated also in the mind and intelligence. And therefore one is very pleased with another because they are satisfying each other in the mind and intelligence as well. Therefore, being in lust is something which starts from the bodily platform and gradually develops higher into the mind and intelligence. And one becomes devoured by this lust, completely, totally, and entirely, like a raging fire devours a forest, even a forest of fuel. So lust can devour any fuel thrown to it. When one is lusty, you can go on throwing sense gratification at it for days and months and years and lifetimes. But it does not stop. It rages so much. Even as soon as one comes out of the womb, in his next lifetime, raging lust is there to enjoy again. With even more determination, because now there's a nice young body to enjoy it with. So this is going on. Lust is so powerful, it devours the living entity. Therefore, it's very dangerous to allow these lusty desires to overwhelm us. Why? Because, Prabhupada once said, intelligence and the soul are like this. So close together they are. Intelligence is wrapped around the soul. The first covering, after the false ego, is very, very subtle. The intelligence is there, wrapped around the soul. And the lusty intelligence captures the soul in lusty desire. And that is the cause of the bondage of this material world, lusty desires. Therefore, when that intelligence is so contaminated, the whole existence becomes very troublesome. Because then all of one's determination, all of one's activities, all of one's goals and procedures are all based on lust. There are two ways you can make plans. One is for the pleasure of Krishna, and the other is for the pleasure of one's senses, gross or subtle. One is guided by spiritual intelligence, or the spiritual master. The other is guided by material lust. Material lust guides one to make decisions just so that he can enjoy. He will make plans just so that he can enjoy. He will go places or do things simply to enjoy. His every move is calculated for enjoyment. Just like instead of walking that way, one walks that way because then he can walk by some young lady. Calculating. The young ladies, they do that too. Instead of walking that way, they walk this way so they can walk by the young man. It's very calculated. Every decision. Where to go, what to wear, how to look, how to talk, how to speak in front of others. You can really get into it very deeply, psychologically. How one does everything simply to attract others. Especially as soon as there is a member of the opposite sex in the room. We all have experience. When it's all girls or all boys in one place, they act very differently than if there's a mixture. We have often seen, we laugh at these things all the time. When there's a group of boys together and all of a sudden one girl comes in. And immediately there's a transformation in the whole thing. Immediately. Now instead of having fun and rolling on the floor laughing and all these things, now everybody's putting on some to display how wonderful they are. Then they say things in such a way to show how top they are. Start holding themselves in such a way. And very suave and debonair. This is going on. And the girls also, they could have been just doing who knows what before. And as soon as a boy walks in the room, then immediately they're all... This is like, it's natural. You can't even understand why it's happening. It's natural. Therefore, in these situations, we generally become very quiet and just observe the absurdity. Because there's nothing you can do about it. The chemicals are so arranged that this is what happens. It's like all the little chemicals just line themselves up, And they're all very loosely bound up when there's like just one group of one sex. And as soon as another one comes, it's like electric charge. They all line up in a certain way. You cannot deal with it anymore. But this is the nature of lust. Therefore, Krishna will say tomorrow night, so we will not tell you tonight, the solution to this, which is don't do it. Don't get involved in these things. Consider the self as simply the part of the Supreme, who is meant to serve the Supreme without any other ideas in the head. One should not do service for Krishna thinking, I'll be glorified. One should not do service for Krishna thinking, I'm going to get something out of this. One should not... Of course, you think you get purification and love of Godhead. That's something you can get. But nothing else, materially. One should not think that one is going to become very distinct because he's the best at what he does. No one should ever be like that. We should be for instance, if we don't want to be glorified, we glorify Krishna. If one doesn't want to have profit for himself, he gives all profit to Krishna. And if one is not interested in being very distinct, he also teaches others how they can do the same thing. In this way, one can become freed from these lower modes of material nature. If he tries. If he tries. If you try with intelligence and determination, one can be free. And even when one doesn't have too much intelligence or determination, he should just serve Krishna all the time. He will also be freed. Even if you don't have terribly too much intelligence or determination or willpower, even these things are lacking. You can still go out and serve Krishna as you are obligated or as you are instructed to. And even if there's no brain in the head, if you just try, you can get the mercy of the Lord. You can get the mercy of spiritual master. Just by trying. Because that simple service That simple-hearted dedication is actually what is the foundation of Bhakti Yoga. That one simply tries. Even if the rest of the whole situation is not perfect, if he just tries to please Spiritual Master and Krishna, then automatically, even so that one can't even understand how it's happening, these lusty desires go away. And then after a while, one can't even stand it. Formerly, if somebody would have told him, "You're the greatest." If somebody says that to him now, he says, "What, are you kidding? What are you trying to get out of me? The Krishna is the greatest. You'll never allow such a thing." If somebody comes up to him and says, "Look, if you just make a few more samosas for me, I'll give you 100 crowns. One says, "What, are you kidding? You're supposed to be brahmachari. What are you doing with 100 crowns? Give that money to Krishna. You can have the samosas anyway." Or if one says to him, "Oh, you're the only one who knows how to do this or that." Then he says, "Well, that's not very good. What happens if I die tomorrow? Why don't you learn how to do it too? Then I won't be the only one anymore." For a devotee, being the only one who knows how to do something is no fun. And then what happens if he doesn't do it the next day? If he gets sick, right? If he gets transferred to another locality, I mean, how's it going to go on? Therefore, devotees should be always wanting to teach others everything. And then everybody goes up. The idea with distinction is that you go up, everybody else goes down, or stays at least the same. But in devotees, everybody wants to go up. We want everybody to go up. So we teach them all so many things. One becomes expert in so many things. In this way, he becomes all around good at serving Krishna. And that is a great distinction. That is a great distinction. So these are just some little tricks on how to free oneself from subtle sense gratification, fame, profit, and distinction, by just simply trying to uplift one's consciousness, by always keeping in mind this one goal, this one idea. I am Krishna's eternal servant, and I am not the master. I am the servant, and I am meant to serve. And when Krishna is pleased, then I will be very pleased, because Krishna is pleased. All right, Harikesa. A car accident, my eyeballs are still good. You can have my eyeballs. Or if I die in a car, yeah, every American license has it. You don't have that in Sweden? That's completely wild. I never check it. They say, okay, you can have my heart, you can have my eyeballs, you can have my liver, or other. You put other. God only knows what you put, my fingernails or whatever, I don't know. Then they take them out of one body, then they stick them in another body. They take your eyeball and they pop it in somebody else's head. Then he sees again. So they think like this: if we can just keep taking enough parts, spare parts from all these cracked up bodies, we put them all together, then the body will go on living a long time. But it doesn't. You still die, you see. You can manage to keep this body going for some time. Or the modern way of keeping it going. You can lay in one of these tubes, and they have all these wires coming out of you, and all this sucking your blood out. Another machine is cleaning your blood, and another machine is pumping your heart. Another machine is sucking your kidneys out. Another machine is feeding you. Another machine is blinking your eyes. You're dead. Laying there, completely dead for all intents and purposes. But machines are using your body to make it work. What is this? And this is the end of life of modern man nowadays. I did one program, and I don't remember where it was, just 2 weeks ago on that Wednesday. This one doctor man was there, and he said, "What do you think of keeping people alive in these containers with all these life support systems? But this is all just worthless. What is the use of maintaining the dead body, even if it looks to be living? You will go on changing your bodies life after life, and in each and every life, this body will grow old and it will die, and there's no need to try to keep maintaining it like that. The best thing is to try to get out of all situations of entanglement with the material body. Don't try to make this body perfect. or make this life perfect. It will not happen, no matter what you do. One has to try to make his life perfect by freeing himself from the attachment to this material body. And you can free yourself from the attachment to the material body by taking up the spiritual process of self-realization. That is why we are presenting this Krishna consciousness to everybody. So that this process of self-realization will bring one to the platform of blissful knowledge. Eternality, knowledge, and bliss. So this process is available to everybody. It's a very simple process. You just chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the life will become absolutely sublime. There's no doubt about it. So we invite you all to come and join us in whatever way you can to work for the sake of Krishna and Krishna consciousness by performing devotional service. Do something, in other words, for the sake of Krishna. Or chant Krishna's name, this mantra, this transcendental sound vibration is so nice, it will completely change your consciousness by purifying it. And then one will actually experience some transcendental bliss. We can talk about bliss, that's alright. You can hear about it, that's also alright. But when you taste it, that's the best. So are there any questions? A little hot here today, no? Seems like summer's coming late this year. All right, good time to have the feast. Hare Krishna.